Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Our lead tonight is about China and how it is sabotaging iPhone manufacturing in India. This is one of India's biggest manufacturing success stories. 20% of all iPhones in the world are now made in India. By the end of 2026, Apple planned to make India its main supplier for iPhones sold in the United States. China is now trying to derail that progress. We will tell you how. Also in focus, is an India-US trade deal coming in the next 48 hours? Is China backing Elon Musk in his feud with Donald Trump? And speaking of Trump, what's with the new pitch that he's made? Make shipping great again. What's the big takeaway from Prime Minister Modi's visit to Ghana? Why an F-35 stealth jet has been stranded in India's Kerala for almost 3 weeks? In Japan, a tiny island has experienced over 1,000 earthquakes in 2 weeks. In the Silicon Valley, it's OpenAI versus Meta. Sam Altman is taking a dig at Mark Zuckerberg for poaching his staff. In Mali, 3 Indians have been abducted amid attacks by a group linked to the Al-Qaeda. And how investors are making money by selling Wimbledon Debentures seats. We'll tell you who can get them and how. But first, as always, the headlines. Thailand gets its third Prime Minister in 3 days. The political upheaval began on Tuesday when a court suspended Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra. The Deputy Prime Minister then took over for 1 day, and today a former Defence Minister was sworn in as the acting Premier. A ferry sinks off the popular Indonesian resort island of Bali. At least 6 people have died. More than 30 have been rescued, but dozens are still missing. No confirmation yet on whether any foreigners were on this ferry. In March, a boat carrying 16 people had capsized off Bali. In India, the Amarnath Yatra begins amid tight security in Jammu and Kashmir. The 38-day pilgrimage is taking place in the shadow of the Pahalgam terror attack in the month of April. Helicopter services for the Yatra have been suspended over security concerns. More than 3 lakh devotees have registered for this year's pilgrimage, which ends on the 9th of August. US President Donald Trump announces a surprise summit with 5 African nations next week. He will host leaders from Gabon, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mauritania and Senegal. Washington says the focus will be on exploring quote-unquote commercial opportunities. Trump has cut massive amounts of US aid for Africa as part of his America First policy. And the football world is in mourning. Liverpool and Portugal star Diogo Jota dies in a car crash in Spain. The tragedy comes just weeks after his wedding. The car veered off a motorway and burst into flames. The crash also killed the brother of the 28-year-old footballer. Do you know what is the top-selling electronic product in the world? The smartphone. The market is worth over $600 billion, and for years, China ruled it. But now India is closing in. This year, India became the world's second largest maker of phones. And this seems to have rattled China. First, they dismissed India's rise. They launched social media campaigns and spread racist jibes like this one. Check if Indian phones smell like curry. That narrative failed to gain traction. So now, instead of stepping up their game, the Chinese are trying to pull India back. China is sabotaging India's phone manufacturing. Tonight, we will tell you how. And we'll start with Foxconn. Foxconn is a Taiwanese company. It is Apple's biggest supplier. It has factories in Taiwan and China, and it has been expanding manufacturing in India. Earlier, most Foxconn facilities were concentrated in China. But like everyone else, Foxconn is also diversifying. It is reducing its dependence on China and growing its footprint in India. But now those efforts have hit a roadblock because Foxconn is losing people. It has pulled hundreds of workers from its factories in India. More than 300 of them have left India. 300 Foxconn workers. These were Chinese citizens. They were engineers and technicians. They were working at Foxconn plants in India, the factories that made the iPhones. And why were these Chinese workers here? To help set up Foxconn's new facilities, to share the know-how and to transfer technology. Basically, to enable Foxconn to make more iPhones in India. That's why they were here. But 2 months ago, these workers received orders. They were told to fly back home. The obvious question is why? Why did Foxconn pull so many workers? The company has not explained the decision, but some reports have shed light on what may have happened. This story began in Beijing earlier this year when Chinese officials passed new orders for regulators and local governments. They were asked to curb tech transfers. They were also asked to cut down the export of equipment to other countries. In other words, companies were leaving China and Beijing made it harder for them to leave. And the official instructions were very specific. They named India and Southeast Asia. They basically imposed a shadow ban to stop companies from leaving China and relocating to India and Southeast Asia. And this was not an isolated move. China has done the same with rare earths and fertilizers. Rare earth minerals, as you know, are used to build electronics. Fertilizers are widely used by farmers. China is a top supplier of both. It has not slapped any official export restrictions on India, but it has put indirect barriers. Same with Chinese workers. There is no ban on them working in India. There is no formal restriction on sharing technology with India, but China is still doing it, pulling out people and quietly blocking supplies. Beijing has put in place a silent, informal blockade, and the target is very clear: stop India's advance in manufacturing. But how does Foxconn figure in this? Well, it's a tech manufacturing giant. Its biggest facility is still in China. Beijing's blockade will slow down the training of their workforce. And if China keeps restricting tech transfers, production costs might go up. But the quality of production will not be impacted. Foxconn is already trying to fill the gaps. It is bringing in workers from Taiwan and Vietnam to replace the Chinese workers who have left. So this will be a short-term challenge. But it exposes China's larger design. It shows how China is trying to scuttle India's rise as a global manufacturing hub. As multinational companies try to deleverage from China as they seek alternatives, India is emerging as a compelling option, and that reality does not sit well with Beijing. So it is building a walled garden around its factories, its equipment, its supplies, and most importantly, its copied know-how. China is doing the same thing that it accuses the Americans of doing. It is sabotaging competition.
The global economy is deeply integrated, and no country can grow or prosper alone, isolated from the world. Cooperation is the inevitable choice for development. In times when the global economy faces difficulties, what we need is not the law of the jungle, where the weak fall prey to the strong, but cooperation and mutual success for a win-win outcome.
The global economy is deeply integrated. No country can grow or prosper alone. Cooperation is inevitable. These are the words of Chinese Premier Li Qiang. He said it last month to lecture the US. Last year, Chinese President Xi Jinping said something similar at the G20 summit. Let me quote from what he said. There should be more bridges of cooperation and less small yard-high fences, so that more and more developing countries will be better off and achieve modernization. Again, this was aimed at the West. But when it comes to India, China is guilty of the very tactics it loves to criticize. Let's not forget, China was once the biggest beneficiary of globalization, but now they're weaponizing it, not to grow, but to undermine India. The hypocrisy is hard to miss, and so is the message to New Delhi. India cannot depend on Beijing for imports Not anymore. It must build alternatives. It must invest in manufacturing and seek trade partners who do not turn competition into sabotage. Because China has proven it is not a partner, it is a risk.
Tariffs give our country protection against those that would do us economic harm. And so we're going to be announcing very shortly tariff.
India and the US are on the verge of a trade deal. Reports say it could be signed in 48 hours. If true, it is significant. The US is India's largest export market, so New Delhi was keen to avoid Donald Trump's tariffs. And after months of talks, there could be a deal. Not a full trade deal yet, but an interim agreement. Last week, an Indian team traveled to Washington. They extended their stay to sort out the major issues. And we've mentioned some of these before. The US wants access to India's agriculture market, but India is reluctant to open it up. As a result, a deal looked unlikely, especially before the deadline of July 9th. That's when Trump's tariffs are expected to kick in, the 9th of July. Both sides hoped to get a deal before that. Then at one point, Indian officials said that they were not in a hurry. They said that they were keen, but they were not desperate for a deal. So what has changed now? The terms. They've removed the sticking points. Reports say agriculture and dairy have been kept out of this deal. The focus is on other tariffs like American whiskey or automobiles. But this mini deal alone is not going to be enough. India and the US have set an ambitious trade goal. They want to reach $500 billion by 2030. And for that, you need a full trade deal. Which brings us to the areas of contention. Donald Trump wants to sell American farm goods in India. He wants to sell us things like soybean and corn. But agriculture is a sensitive sector in our country. Almost 45% of all Indians work in agriculture, 45% of our workforce. So successive governments have shielded this sector, agriculture, from competition. Plus, there's a political angle. Farmers are a powerful voting bloc in India. If you cut tariffs on imports, if you make imported crops cheaper, Indian farmers will punish you. Similar concerns exist in the dairy sector too. Around 70 million farmers in India are involved in milk production. So outside competition was a strict no. But Donald Trump refuses to budge. He wants to enter India's agro and dairy market. That is the American demand. Now, what is India's demand? We want more access to labor-intensive sectors, basically sectors that create a lot of jobs in India, like garments, footwear, electronics. These are the points that are holding up a full deal, India's demands and America's demands. And now there's a new political concern. A US senator is pushing a new bill. This bill is linked to Russia. It calls for a 500% tariff on India, 500%. Let me explain why. The senator in question is Lindsey Graham. His bill will target countries that buy from Russia, whether it's oil, gas, or uranium. If you buy from Russia, you will face 500% tariffs. Around 80 American senators back this bill, meaning it can be passed even if President Donald Trump does not support it. Naturally, this is a concern for India. Russia is our top oil supplier and America is our top export market. So a 500% tariff would be a deadly blow. Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar was asked about this threat. The minister was in Washington for the Quad Summit. Listen to his response.
The embassy, the ambassador has been in touch. I think our concerns and our interests on energy security have been made conversant to him. So we'll then have to cross that bridge when we come to it, if we come to it.
If the bill is passed, we will need another deal, one that exempts India from the new tariffs. And frankly, that sums up the whole Trump presidency. It's an endless quest for deals. A deal to avoid tariffs, a deal to escape sanctions, a deal to denuclearize Iran, a deal to end the Ukraine war. It's always about one deal or the other. But how well are those negotiations really going? Not well. Trump had paused his tariffs for 90 days. The White House promised to use this time to strike deals. 90 deals in 90 days. That was Donald Trump's promise. And how many has he struck? One with the UK. A second one was announced yesterday. Trump says Vietnam will sign a trade deal with the US. He was planning to impose 46% tariffs on Vietnam. Under this new deal, it will be just 20% American tariffs. And what does the US get in return? 0 tariffs on American goods sold in Vietnam. Meaning, American exports to Vietnam will be tariff-free. And it's actually not a surprise. Vietnam sends goods worth $136 billion to the US. $136 billion from Vietnam to the US. And US exports are just $13 billion. So Vietnam needed this deal a lot more than the US did. Hence the favorable terms. Having said that, there is a rider. The US will charge a trans-shipping tariff of 40%, 40. What does that mean? Say Vietnam is routing Chinese goods to America, from China to Vietnam to America. Basically buying from China and then selling it to the US. Then the tariff will not be 20%, it will be 40%. If you look at all these negotiations, one thing becomes very clear. Donald Trump has limited leverage. He may be able to arm twist Vietnam or the UK because they are dependent on the US, but he cannot bully bigger countries and economies. And there's no problem in chasing deals, but you must come from a place of trust and understanding. Threats and coercion may not work. Politics makes strange bedfellows, and in 2025, few pairings are stranger than China and Elon Musk. We told you about a feud yesterday between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. They were once BFFs. Now the two are battling over Trump's new bill. Musk wants his own new political party. Trump is looking to deport him, and China has taken a side in this fight. China is backing Elon Musk. I know it sounds strange when you hear it. We are talking about one of the most tightly controlled states in the world, yet they are rooting for a chaos-loving billionaire. Beijing has turned him into something of a folk hero. Look at Weibo. Weibo is a Chinese social media platform. A new hashtag has gone viral on Weibo. It says hashtag Musk wants to build an America party. This is the hashtag. And this has over 37 million views on Weibo. And the comments are also positive. One user says there's a lot of potential for this new party. Another said, and I'm quoting, "Brother Musk, you've got over 1 billion people on our side backing you." I'll repeat that for you. He says 1 billion Chinese are backing Elon Musk against Donald Trump. So what exactly is going on here? Why is China cheering Elon Musk's idea to float a new political party? Why are Chinese netizens rooting for Elon Musk? To understand that, we'll have to go back in the past. Elon Musk's popularity in China is not accidental. The Tesla CEO has spent years courting China, and Beijing has returned the favor. There have been strategic business deals, a lot of cultural embrace, and let's be honest, some flattery on both sides. Back in 2019, Elon Musk opened Tesla's Shanghai Gigafactory. This was the company's first plant outside the US. It was also a first for China. The first time they allowed a foreign car company to operate without a local partner. They made that exception for Elon Musk. What followed was a whirlwind. $1.4 billion in loans from Chinese state banks, reduced taxes, a booming EV market hungry for Teslas, and cheap labor and manufacturing costs. Today, more than half of Tesla's cars are made in China. More than half. 40% of its battery supply chains run through Chinese firms. And Elon Musk just opened a second factory in Shanghai. So his financial fate is deeply intertwined with China. And it reflects in his statements too. Musk has a comment for every country and every government. He criticizes democracies around the globe. He meddles in elections in Europe. He lectures Australia and the UK. But when it comes to China, there is radio silence. No advice on upholding human rights. No criticism of their politics. In fact, Elon Musk praises Chinese workers for quote-unquote burning the 3 a.m. oil. And he opposes decoupling from China. When asked about Taiwan, Musk compares it to Hawaii. He says Taiwan is a part of China, just like Hawaii is a part of the US. And then we have his mother. Her name is May Musk. She is practically a lifestyle brand on Chinese social media. She has posed in Chinese traditional dresses. She hosts live streams with Chinese influencers. Long story short, Musk and China are tight-knit. It works for Musk's business. But what's in it for the Chinese? Leverage. That's what China gets. The Tesla CEO is a growing influence in Washington's politics. He has big companies. He has his social media platform. He's too big to ignore and he's too rich to cancel. In other words, he is the perfect wild card. So then the obvious next question, is Elon Musk Beijing's man in the US? Well, not quite. He's not their man, but he's the kind of man they can work with, at least for now. And compared to Donald Trump, he's a dream. Elon Musk builds things. He makes China look good. He does not call Xi Jinping names on national television.
Thank you.
So Musk has become an unlikely asset in China's global playbook. As for the Tesla CEO, when the president is looking at deporting you, it doesn't hurt to have 1 billion fans, even if they live across the Pacific. What makes a global superpower? Is it a huge economy? Is it a large army? Or maybe a strong leader? It's hard to pinpoint a single factor, but in the past, all superpowers have had one thing in common: a great maritime fleet. Almost 71% of the Earth's surface is water, which is why ships are so important. You need ships to transport goods, you need ships to ferry troops, and you need ships to blockade the enemy's trade. History is proof of this. Just look at Britain in the 19th century. Small island, not a lot of people, but a superpower, all thanks to a great navy. Also look at America in the 20th century. Great navy, great power. Just think about the Second World War. America and Europe were separated by a vast ocean, yet the US could send firepower and soldiers to fight the war. How? Thanks to a great navy. In the 21st century, China is doing the same. They're building ships at an unbelievable rate, and Donald Trump does not like it. He wants to make American shipping great again. And how does he plan to do that? By throwing money at the problem. His latest bill, the big beautiful bill as he calls it, has set aside funds to revive American shipbuilding. We're talking about $30 billion for shipbuilding. The aim is to expand capacity at private shipyards, to build more ships and naval assets. Trump promised that in his speech to the US Congress.
To boost our defense industrial base, we are also going to resurrect the American shipbuilding industry, including commercial shipbuilding and military shipbuilding. We used to make so many ships. We don't make them anymore very much, but we're going to make them very fast, very soon.
First, let's look at the scale of the problem. Last year, the US made 5 large ships. Their total volume was around 76,000 tons. 5 ships, 76,000 tons. Now look at China. China's biggest state firm alone made 250 ships last year. Their total volume, around 14 million tons. That's more than America's total output since 1950. So simply put, the gap is quite significant. China made up just 5% of the shipbuilding market in the year 2000. Today, it makes up 53% of the market, which raises 2 questions. What did America do wrong? And what did China do right? And both answers are actually linked to each other. The US has deindustrialized since the 1990s, and it's not just shipbuilding. A lot of labor-intensive industries have decayed in America. In this case, in the case of shipbuilding, because of two factors. One is the rising costs. You mainly need two inputs to make ships, labor and metal, and both are way too expensive in the US. So that's one reason why American shipbuilding has suffered. The second reason is that state support was missing. In the 1980s, the US slashed subsidies for shipbuilders. In China, the opposite happened in the last decade. Look at the period from the year 2010 to 2018. Chinese state support to shipbuilders was $132 billion. So to recap, America cut support, China expanded support. Which brings us to present day. Can Donald Trump's plan reverse this equation? In the long run, maybe. But in the short term, it's unlikely to happen. A short-term fix is unlikely. Shipbuilding is not an industry that you can create overnight. Plus, China has a massive head start, which is why experts suggest a partnership. American allies in the Indo-Pacific already have robust shipping sectors, especially South Korea and Japan. If they partner with the US, they can challenge China. But again, time is of the essence. A lot of this maritime activity is focused on the military situation. American officials feel that China will invade Taiwan in this decade. Perhaps in 2027, China will attack Taiwan. And if they do, ships will play a crucial role. Now look at how the numbers stack up. The US Navy has around 440 vessels. That's carriers, plus destroyers, plus submarines, plus everything. 440 vessels. Now look at China. Beijing's fleet has 754 vessels. This would explain Donald Trump's urgency. Having said that, it's not always about the numbers. It's also about the quality, about what sort of ships you have. The US has 81 naval destroyers. China has only 50. The US has 11 aircraft carriers, and China has just 3. But look at naval patrol vessels. America has none, China has 150. If war breaks out, I'm not sure patrol vessels will be quite useful. So this race is a lot more complicated than just numbers. Which brings us to India. Does India have a role to play in it? Possibly. Right now, our industry is quite small. It is worth around $1.1 billion, the Indian shipping industry, $1.1 billion. We make up just 0.05% of the shipbuilding market. But the government has an ambitious plan. It wants to become a top 10 shipbuilder. It wants India to become a top 10 shipbuilder by 2030 and a top 5 shipbuilder by 2047. On paper, we are quite capable of doing that. We have an 11,000 kilometer long coastline. We have 230 plus ports. Not to mention we have a lot of labor. What we don't have is the ecosystem. Loans are too expensive, regulations are a bit slower, and technology is not the best. Thankfully, the government recognizes these challenges. In the last budget, India set aside $2.8 billion for the maritime sector. When it comes to warships, we are doing quite well. In 2022, the Indian Navy commissioned the INS Vikrant. It was the first carrier to be built in India. Last week, a new frigate was commissioned in Russia's Kaliningrad. It will be the last foreign-built warship. Going forward, all Indian warships will be built in India. As we speak, some 60 ships are under construction for the Navy. So here's the big picture. There is a new maritime race unfolding in the world, but it's not being fought on the high seas. It is being fought in shipyards. You need ships to project power and dominate trade. As a famous Athenian general said, he who commands the sea has command of everything.
Shri Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of the Republic of India, in this August House.
Prime Minister Modi's marathon foreign trip is underway. Today he was in Ghana, a country located in West Africa. Such a trip was happening after a long break. The last Indian Prime Minister to visit Ghana was P.V. Narasimha Rao, and that was way back in 1995. So this trip broke a 30-year streak. Prime Minister Modi was welcomed at the airport by Ghana's president. He got a ceremonial welcome. Take a look at this first. Then it was down to business. Ghana gave its highest national honor to Prime Minister Modi, the Officer of the Order of the Star of Ghana. That made it 24 foreign awards for the Indian Prime Minister. After that, he held talks with Ghana's President, John Mahama. They signed 4 agreements in total. They cover culture, healthcare, and goods certification. But more importantly, Modi and Mahama elevated the bilateral relationship. It is now a comprehensive partnership. And why is that significant? Because it expands the areas of engagement. You talk more frequently and you talk about a lot more things. The Prime Minister hailed the shared struggles of India and Ghana. He called Ghana a beacon of hope in West Africa.
हमारे देशों के फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल ने बहुत से अन्य देशों को प्रेरित किया। आज भी पश्चिम अफ्रीका में घाना एक जीवंत लोकतंत्र के रूप में अन्य देशों के लिए बीकन ऑफ होप है। फ्रेंड्स, हम दोनों ग्लोबल साउथ के सदस्य हैं और उसकी प्राथमिकताओं के लिए पूरी तरह प्रतिबद्ध है। वॉइस ऑफ ग्लोबल साउथ समिट में उनकी सकारात्मक भागीदारी के लिए हम घाना का धन्यवाद करते हैं।
Prime Minister Modi then visited Ghana's parliament. He was welcomed with celebrations outside. Take a look. The Indian Prime Minister addressed the parliament. Dozens of lawmakers packed into this massive hall. A couple of them were dressed in Indian attire. One was wearing a sherwani, the other wore a lehenga. The Prime Minister met both of them afterwards. In his speech, Prime Minister Modi highlighted 3 main points: the importance of democracy, the depth of India-Ghana ties, and the future of the global south. He compared the relationship to Ghana's sugarloaf pineapple. Listen in.
We built nations rooted in freedom, unity, and dignity. Our relationship knows no bounds. And with your permission, may I say, our friendship is sweeter than your famous sugarloaf pineapple. With President Mahama, we have decided to elevate our ties to a comprehensive partnership.
The Global South is the main mission. After Ghana, Prime Minister Modi will visit 4 countries: Trinidad and Tobago, Argentina, Brazil and Namibia. All these are Global South countries. Prime Minister Modi is trying to unite and lead them. These countries may have shared interests and concerns, but they do not speak in one voice. India is hoping to change that. And a strategy is slowly taking shape. Prime Minister Modi appears to be focusing on 3 common factors. 1, a shared colonial past. He spoke about the scars of colonialism. He said some of those scars continue to persist. It could be a reference to Western institutions or policies. Factor number 2, Prime Minister Modi talked up the importance of democracy, the importance of nation building. In fact, let me quote from what he said. In Ghana's journey of nation building, India is not just a supporter, but also a fellow traveler. This is different from China and the West. The West is never a fellow traveler. It's always the cocky guy who's already visited the place. And China, they're not even on the democratic path. So Beijing has no vision to offer. Which brings us to the third factor, offering Indian assistance. Prime Minister Modi offered to share India's UPI payment technology. He announced a skilling center in Ghana. He proposed setting up healthcare centers, discussed vaccine cooperation, and offered help in mining and processing. You see the trend here. These are not big budget programs like what China offers. Beijing builds massive highways and gigantic ports. Yes, they look impressive, but they also submerge these countries in debt. India is offering grassroots level help, like in financial technology or skilling or healthcare. History shows that this is more sustainable, and Ghana is the right place to start this outreach. Our ties date back decades. Together, India and Ghana founded the Non-Aligned Movement. This was a group of countries that stayed neutral in the Cold War. They did not join the US or the Soviet Union. Recently, trade has also picked up. The India-Ghana bilateral trade stands at $3 billion. The target is to double that in 5 years. Investments are also booming. Indian firms are running some 900 projects in Ghana. Their investments are worth $2 billion, which is probably why Prime Minister Modi chose to visit Ghana first. This is an ambitious foreign policy move by the Indian Prime Minister. We'll be tracking his visit closely. His next stop is Trinidad and Tobago. It was supposed to be a symbol of 21st century air dominance. Instead, it is Kerala's most expensive tourist attraction. I'm talking about the F-35 jet, the one that landed at the Thiruvananthapuram International Airport. It came on the 14th of June. 18 days later, it is still there, and it's become the butt of internet jokes. Kerala tourism is turning the jet into a marketing opportunity. Memes have taken flight on social media, unlike, of course, the jet itself. But how did this particular F-35 land up in Kerala? Why is it still stranded, and what does it mean for this cutting-edge war machine? Our story starts on June 14th, like I said. A British aircraft carrier was in the Arabian Sea, the HMS Prince of Wales. It was conducting routine naval drills. The F-35 jet was part of that drill. At around 8:50 p.m. local time, it took off. 30 minutes later, the weather took a turn for the worse. The jet was running out of fuel. It could not make it back to the aircraft carrier, so it issued a distress alert. It contacted the Thiruvananthapuram airport. India gave the green light, and soon the jet landed in Kerala at around 9:30 p.m. But after landing, it encountered some more issues. What followed was less Top Gun, more Top Gear. That same night, a crew flew into India. They tried to see what was wrong, but they could not figure it out. So for days, this $100 million jet stood in rain and sunshine. India offered the jet some hangar space, but Britain refused. After all, this was their premium stealth machine. They were worried about spying, about revealing cutting-edge tech. So they decided to keep it on the bay, where the whole world could see it. Then a few days ago, another team came to inspect what was wrong. This team consisted of 40 people, 40 people to figure out why a $100 million jet won't fly, and they couldn't figure it out. Now, the UK authorities say the jet is beyond repair. Basically, it cannot be fixed. So London is considering a Hail Mary, airlifting the jet out of India. That would mean calling in a C-17 Globemaster, and this is not something that nations do lightly. Transporting a fighter jet like cargo is not exactly a flex. But London does not really have an option. They're calling it an engineering issue, typical British euphemism. But experts have their guesses. They believe it could be a problem with the hydraulic system. Either way, the team cannot find a fix because the F-35 is not an ordinary jet. We are talking about a very complicated machine, a fifth-generation stealth fighter, one of the most advanced jets in the world. The F-35 was built by America's defense giant Lockheed Martin. The jet currently stranded in Kerala is the F-35B variant. It is specifically designed for short takeoffs. That makes it perfect for aircraft carriers and tight runways. The US has sold the F-35 jets to a lot of its allies, and it came at a hefty price tag. Each jet costs around $100 million. But it also comes with its own headaches. There have been maintenance challenges and reliability concerns. And the timing of this Kerala story could not have been worse for the Americans. You see, India is in the market to buy jets. India wants to buy fifth-generation fighter jets. The choice is between the Russian Su-57 and the American F-35. And the US is very keen to sell the F-35 to India. But you cannot make a billion-dollar pitch with a stranded plane. And to make things even worse, the Indian Air Force piped in with a curious detail. They said their radar network had, quote-unquote, detected the F-35. And this detail is very important. Stealth is the F-35's biggest selling point. It is not supposed to be detected. It is a stealth jet. But India says it knew that the F-35 was in the airspace. So is stealth just a state of mind then? Either way, here we are. A jet that was supposed to be invisible is getting more screen time than ever. It's got all the features except apparently the one that helps it fly home. Yes, this is Mission Impossible, the grounded edition. And even Tom Cruise cannot save this one. For our next story, let's talk about a tiny island in southern Japan. It's called Akuseki. Just 89 people live there. For the past 2 weeks, they've been shaken by over 1,000 earthquakes. Today, another strong quake hit this island. It measured 5.5 on the Richter scale. Local authorities ordered residents to evacuate for a brief period of time. No major damage was reported, but officials warn that the ground remains unstable. You see, Japan witnesses about 1,500 earthquakes every year. It is prone to tremors. But this time it's different. Because experts say the big one is coming, a mega quake that could strike within 30 years and kill up to 298,000 people. That is the projection. Here's a report.
Akuseki is a tiny island off the southern coast of Japan. It sits quietly in the Tokara Island chain with just 89 people living there. But in the past 2 weeks, this quiet island has been anything but still. Akuseki has experienced more than 1,000 earthquakes in less than a month. Today, another strong quake hit, registering 5.5 on the Richter scale. The day before, a quake of the same magnitude was recorded. Local authorities are taking precautions. Earlier today, they urged all residents to evacuate to a school playground because it's a safe and open space away from buildings and the sea. The evacuation order was later lifted. This was after everyone was accounted for, and no major damage was reported. Officials said there was no risk of a tsunami this time, but they warn that the ground remains unstable. Residents have been cautioned about the possibility of collapsing houses and landslides. Akuseki is just one of 7 inhabited islands in the Tokara chain. About 700 people live on these islands. The region has experienced earthquake swarms before. In 2023, there were 346 quakes recorded, but this time the scale is much bigger. Akuseki sits on one of the most volatile places on the planet, the Pacific Ring of Fire. Japan is situated on 4 major tectonic plates. It sees around 1,500 earthquakes every year, and they carry a painful memory. In 2011, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake had triggered a tsunami in northern Japan. Nearly 18,500 people died or went missing. The tsunami also caused a nuclear meltdown in Fukushima. That disaster still casts a long shadow on the country. Earlier this year, the Japanese government warned of an even greater risk. a megaquake in the Nankai Trough in the southern seas of Japan. Experts say it could strike within 30 years. Such a quake could kill up to 298,000 people and cause damage worth $2 trillion. Japan, which has a strong system to tackle frequent earthquakes, feels underprepared to deal with a disaster of this scale. Japan remains one of the most seismically active countries on Earth. It accounts for about 18% of the world's earthquakes. The earthquakes in Akusaki are a stress test for the Japanese authorities. The ground continues to tremble there, and the locals remain watchful for what lies ahead.
It all started with the dinner party, a quiet gathering at one of Mark Zuckerberg's homes. There were only a few guests, some of the smartest minds in artificial intelligence. They were handpicked by the Meta CEO himself. There was wine, there was talk of the future, and there was a pitch. Join Meta's super intelligence team for $100 million. $100 million. That's over 800 crore rupees. It's a very compelling offer. So most of them obviously took it. And just like that, Mark Zuckerberg built a new AI team. There are around a dozen people on it. They were all from different companies, the likes of OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google. You see, Meta was far behind in the AI race. It was not making the right moves, so Zuckerberg decided to use his money. And with that, he poached employees. He has hired top OpenAI researchers. He has cleared out the company's Zurich Brain Trust, lured top talent from other companies, and this has not gone down too well with one person, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman. When the rumor started, Sam Altman tried to stay cool. He spoke on a podcast. He insisted that OpenAI's top talent was not leaving. He said Meta would have to try harder. But then came the gut punch. In a leaked internal memo, Sam Altman has dropped the calm facade. Let me quote from what he wrote. What Meta is doing will, in my opinion, lead to very deep cultural problems. And he did not stop there. He further wrote, and I quote, I am proud of how mission-oriented our industry is as a whole. Of course, there will always be some mercenaries. So Sam Altman is making the distinction quite clear. OpenAI are the missionaries, Meta are the mercenaries. In the end, the choice is for the employees to make. But here's the thing. You can look at artificial intelligence as a mission, but when someone dangles $100 million, even the most principled minds start to waver. So here's the million, or should I say $100 million question. Can you buy top talent and super intelligence? And should you? The answer to the first question is a yes. As murky as it may sound, tech is full of stories where the biggest wallet won. Microsoft, Google, Apple, they've all poached talent, they've all copied ideas and outspent rivals. Steve Jobs once famously said, good artists copy, great artists steal. Zuckerberg himself built Facebook by lifting elements. He cloned Snapchat with Instagram stories. He borrowed TikTok's playbook to launch Reels. But this is not just another cool filter. The goal of Zuckerberg's new team is to achieve AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. AGI is the most powerful technology in human history. They say it could cure diseases, reshape economies, maybe even outthink humans entirely. And when the goal is that ambitious, is money enough? Also, Altman is right about one thing. Culture does matter. It's easy to think of engineers and scientists as cogs in a machine. Move one from OpenAI to Meta, and they will do the same job, right? But AI research is often driven by values. The best teams are not always the most expensive ones. They're the ones that are the most cohesive. And Meta has its own demons to battle here. Although Zuckerberg is hoping to change that, he's keeping his new employees close. In fact, he's rearranging their desks to make them sit near him. So at the end of the day, this is a clash of visions. Zuckerberg believes it is a money issue, so he's throwing money at the problem. Altman believes you cannot buy greatness, that culture, trust, and values matter more than cash, which is, by the way, also a little rich coming from him, given that his own board fired him and then he wrestled his way back to the company. So the real question here is not which team wins. It is, that if machines outthink us, will they even care how they were built? Seven attacks, 3 Indians and 1 country, Mali. Mali is a landlocked country in West Africa. It is one of the largest on the continent and it is currently ruled by a military junta. Mali is home to 24 million people and deadly insurgencies which have gathered pace in recent weeks. Over the past month, Mali has seen 3 terror attacks. 2 in the beginning of June, when terrorists targeted military camps and an airport, killing at least 30 soldiers, and a 3rd assault earlier this week. It happened on the 1st of July, a series of simultaneous and coordinated attacks. Terrorists struck 7 towns. They hit military posts and government sites. Mali's army says that it repelled the attacks. The junta killed more than 80 terrorists. They did not report any civilian casualties, but innocents did bear the brunt of this wave of attacks, including some Indian nationals. Now, this may surprise some of you, but Mali has a small community of Indians, about 400 of them. They mainly work in retail businesses, in the mining sector and in the steel and cement industries. In fact, the 3 Indians were working at a cement factory during the recent attacks, the ones who were abducted. The factory is located in a city called Kayes in western Mali. It was one of the targets. Armed assailants attacked the factory, they entered the premises, and they abducted 3 Indian nationals. Now, one terror outfit has claimed responsibility for the attacks. It's called the JNIM, Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin, JNIM. An Islamist group linked to Al-Qaeda. It is a relatively new group. In 2017, several militant factions came together to form the JNIM. And since then, it has become one of the biggest and most powerful terror groups in the region. It says it carried out the recent Malian attacks, but the group has not claimed responsibility for the abduction, at least not so far. India, of course, has condemned the abduction. It has called on Mali to ensure safe and swift release of the hostages. India has an embassy in this country, in the capital, Bamako. It is coordinating with local authorities. It is communicating with families of hostages. The Indian government has also issued an advisory for all Indian nationals in Mali. They are advised to stay vigilant and remain in close contact with the embassy. So India has boosted efforts on multiple levels. But this incident is a worrying sign, not just for Mali or India, but for the whole world. You see, Mali has been racked by a deadly Islamist insurgency for years now. Since 2012, militants have swept into the country, captured towns and destroyed homes. Then in 2020 and 2021, there were back-to-back coups. The military junta seized power, it overthrew the civilian government, it promised to restore stability, but the very opposite has happened. The Islamist insurgency has only grown, and not just in Mali, but the entire region, the wider Sahel region. The Sahel stretches from the west coast of Africa eastwards across the continent. This area is rich in natural resources like uranium and gold. Despite this, it is mired in extreme poverty, political instability and conflict. Insurgent groups have long vied for control in Sahel, hitting military and civilian targets and killing thousands of people. So much so that the Sahel is called the epicenter of global terrorism. It accounts for over half of all terror-related deaths. And needless to say, this is a global security threat. Many countries depend on the Sahel region for imports of oil, gas, or uranium. Thousands of foreigners, including Indians, live in this region. Countries have businesses and factories here. So in a lot of ways, instability in the Sahel means instability for the whole world. But given the region's rapid security collapse, the worst could be yet to come. If you love tennis, Wimbledon is your mecca. Wimbledon tickets are highly sought after, but even so, not all seats are created equal. I'm talking about Wimbledon centre court debenture seats. You see, debentures are financial instruments, kind of like bonds. They're a loan, and that is where the name of these seats comes from. Think of Wimbledon debenture seats as a promise. They guarantee seating for 5 years, along with entry to an exclusive club, with access to VIP lounges, private parking, special viewing rooms, and these tickets, of course, don't come cheap. Debenture seats can cost more than $275,000. $275,000 for seats. Yet their demand is soaring. Few seats are more coveted than them. And now the uber wealthy are buying their tickets only to sell them later for a huge profit. Here's a report.
The premier tennis players, the famous grass courts, the sound of ball on racket. Every summer, this is where tennis fans watch the best players in the sport. The centre court at Wimbledon. But among all the seats offered here, few are more coveted than the Wimbledon debenture seats. In technical terms, debentures are financial instruments. But simply put, they are a promise. They are a way for companies to borrow money without needing to offer specific assets as collateral. And debentures guarantee tennis lovers prime seats at Wimbledon. The best seats to see the world's best tennis. Think of it as an exclusive world, with access to VIP lounges and restaurants, special viewing rooms, private car park, and the package entitles holders to a reserved seat per day of the championships over the course of 5 years. To attend Wimbledon, tickets usually cost several $100s. There are ballots and queues that stretch on for hours. But debenture seats are a league apart. So they don't come cheap. Centre court debenture seats for 2026 to 2030 are already being sold. And the cost stands at more than $275,000. Due to the high demand, this is a 75% profit on previous year's ticket prices. Wimbledon debenture seats have become so profitable that people are now treating them like a tradable asset. On days they can't attend, people are selling their tickets for the day, because these are the only exchangeable tickets for Wimbledon. And since they are debenture tickets, they are regulated, so many investors are increasingly buying the debentures only to sell them later. And for many, this is a profitable pursuit. This is partly thanks to the sports landscape in general. The valuations of sports teams are soaring. From governments to private firms to billionaires, everyone wants to invest in sports. And sporting events have witnessed a surge in ticket costs. Look at the tickets for the Premier League games. They have increased by 800% since 1990. Tickets for the Super Bowl were sold at an average price of about $10,000 last year. Meanwhile, the price of courtside tickets to NBA can go up to $22,000. So investors are getting in on the action. And people are increasingly getting behind debentures. But how do sports courts or clubs utilize this money? When Wimbledon debentures were first sold in 1920, the funds were used to construct the building of the centre court. And this has become a larger trend. Debentures are a big deal in football, as well. From Arsenal to the Minnesota Vikings, many clubs are offering debenture seats. They then use these funds to cover their costs and rake in huge profits. So as ticket prices for premier events soar, everyone from billionaire investors to sports clubs and owners are trying to make an even bigger profit. But the uber-wealthy fans don't care. Because debenture seats make an offer they can't refuse. Exclusivity for an already rarefied class.
The tech world has a new favorite employee. His name is Soham Parekh. And where does he work? Well, a better question is, where doesn't he? Soham was secretly working for multiple tech startups. Nowadays, it is called moonlighting. Now, one of these companies seems to have found out recently and they fired Soham. Since then, other firms have joined in. They too realized that Soham was on their payroll. Now, first of all, kudos for juggling these many jobs. But next time, maybe ask for permission. Of course, the internet does not need any sort of permission. They've already turned Soham into a meme. Take a look.
You're identical.
Not yet, you're not.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots images that tell the story. A 5-story building collapses into a river in southern China. A statue of Lord Shiva submerges as floods wreak havoc in India's Uttarakhand. And an 80-year-old becomes the oldest Indian woman to skydive. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1962, France declared that Algeria was independent. This was 2 days after an independence referendum was held in the North African country. It ended 132 years of French colonization. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.